By far the most commonly used network cable out there is going to be some version or form of twisted pair cabling. Okay, now there are two types of twisted pair cabling you need to be aware of, and that is UTP, and that is unshielded twisted pair cable. Now I want you to notice a couple of things here. You have a number of pairs. Here we have 4 pairs of wires, and notice these things are twisted. Now this isn't a random twisting. These are twisted a certain amount of time, every so often or every so many feet. And what this does is it causes the cables to not crosstalk with each other, okay? And we won't go any farther than that right now. But this unshielded twisted pair cable, notice it's just got a very simple plastic sheath around it, holding it all together. This is referred to as UTP, or unshielded twisted pair cable. Now this cable is relatively susceptible to interface. If you lay this across a fluorescent light near certain electrical devices, you're going to pick up noise in that cable, and it will damage the data that's moving through that cable. So if you're going to use unshielded twisted pair, which is the least expensive, easiest to work with, you'll have to make sure that you keep it away from interference. Okay, again, it is very flexible, it's very easy to work with, so that's the most common type. Now the other type is shielded twisted pair, or STP, and notice the difference here. It looks the same, but each individual pair has this foil or metal type casing around it. Usually it's like a little light foil looking stuff that's in there, and then a lot of times it'll have one more around all of them, and this prevents interference from getting in there. So STP is shielded twisted pair cable. It's much less susceptible to interference the way unshielded twisted pair cable is. However, it's more expensive, it's more rigid than unshielded twisted pair, and this creates problems when you're trying to pull this cable through conduit and buildings and so forth. It doesn't bend as easily, takes up more space, all kinds of things start to come into play. Now keep in mind with twisted pair, whether you're using unshielded twisted pair or shielded twisted pair, you have a maximum length there. We're going to talk about some speeds in just a minute, but you have a maximum usable length of 100 meters or 328 feet. Okay, now the twisted pair categories, and again, you got 100 meters or 328 feet in maximum distance for any one single run of cable. And keep in mind that's almost that's 28 feet longer than a football field, so you can cover a lot of space with a single length of twisted pair cable. Now twisted pair cable comes in categories, and these categories are used to group the cable based on the data transmission speeds that it's capable of. And the first one that we need to know about here is category 3 twisted pair cable, or Cat 3, and this transmits data at 10 megabits per second. Now we used to think that was really fast. Category 4, which was not really used a whole lot, transmitted data at 16 megabits per second. Cat 5 cable, category 5, is still very popular. It's probably the cable that's laying in most buildings now. It transmits data at 100 megabits per second. Keep in mind, this is a 10-time increase over Cat 3, and it was a big day when we started using Cat 5 as opposed to Cat 3. Now, category 5E or Cat 5E would transmit data at 1 gigabit per second, and that was a cool deal. And then the granddaddy here is Cat 6, and Cat 6 cable can transmit data at 10 gigabits per second, and that is some smoking stuff right there. Okay, smoking stuff, southern technical term for really good cable. All right, but the twisted pair cables, make sure you know those categories 3, 4, 5, and 6, and make sure you know 5 and 5E, and you should be good to go. Also, burn it into your brain, burn it into your memory. 100 meters or 328 feet. That's the maximum length of any of these twisted pair cables. Just know your categories, and you should be able to breeze through these twisted pair questions on the exam.